Hey guys, today we're going to get into installation of this Joying head unit in my E90 335i. Going to go through and cover how to install the unit itself, how to remove some of the trim panels to get wiring running wires back to the battery, running the microphone, as well as installing a rear view camera. That's not something that Joying sells, but it's something you can get on Amazon for pretty cheap. With that said, let's dive into it. Okay, for installation, the first thing we have to do is we have to remove the air conditioning controls, and then from there we're going to have to remove the stereo. So this should be pretty easy. Just come in here and pop that side out, come around to the other side, and pop that out as well. It should come on out. So then we've got the two connectors back here. So both of these are kind of got the locking lever. So as you can see there's a tab that you have to push down, and then this lever is able to slide and it pops out. Same thing with this side. Push the tab down, slide that over, and it comes on out. This we'll set aside for now. It's going to require some modification later, but for now, it just gets set away. So next we have got two T20 bolts or screws that need to come out. So just pop those on out. So next, there are a pair of Phillips head screws right down here that hold in the factory head unit. Just go unscrew those. Magnetic screwdriver would be really helpful right now. So yeah, I'm just going to leave that there. So go ahead and pop that out. Careful not to lose our screws. And everything is wired in awfully tight. So as you can see, there's very, very little working room back there. But we're just going to go ahead and unplug everything. So the main harness here also has one of those sliding rotating connectors. Take that, push the lever down, it pops out. So because this isn't the logic unit, there is not much going on in there. So then we can take our stock head unit here and set it to the side. There are two more Torx T20s. I'll go ahead and remove those. Finally, there are two more Torx T20s in here. Some other cars have those are 8mm bolts, but in this one it is Torx T20. Go ahead and just remove those. And from here, this whole bracket should slide right out. Just be careful not to scratch anything, and be careful you don't catch any of your cables. before anything else, the first thing I'm going to do here is take the new head unit, plug it in, and just give it a quick try and make sure that it works. So, got the interface harness already plugged into the head unit. Go ahead here. Plug that connector in. So we have power. The long yellow power cord is so that you can hook it up to directly to the battery, which I'm going to be doing later. But for now, this is simply a quick function test to make sure that it works. Okay, let's try YouTube Music. So there we go. We have sound coming from all 4 speakers. From here, we'll go ahead and work on installing it. I do have a problem with a loud kind of alarm beeping sound going on now that the factory head unit has been removed. I'm guessing it's some type of stereo alarm, and I have to do a bit of research on how to get rid of that. So I'll be back. Okay, so figured out what the beeping was. It was because the doors were open, so not quite sure why that happened, but shutting the doors made it go away. Now we have to put our new air conditioning bracket on. So for this, there are 4 clips. One here, one here, one here, and one here. So these are pretty easy to take off. I don't want to destroy them because I may want to go back to this at some point. So you can just take a small screwdriver, gently lift up on that tab. Again, same here. So we're just going to gently lift up and push that out a little bit. We're going to flip it on over and do the exact same thing. There we go. So those are all out, and this should pop on, or pop right on off. Still got a little bit of resistance from these guys. There we go. We can set that aside. Now we have our HVAC controller. In the instructions, it says that you need to trim these tabs off. And that is because the way this fits in, right, this snaps into here, but you will not have enough clearance with those tabs in place. So just going to go ahead here and take some diagonal cutters. Let's snap that off. And we'll go ahead and snap that off. Hopefully I got enough on that side. If not, we'll take a knife to it. Same thing on the other side. Just going to go and cut that. And cut that. This is the bracket that you use to mount the HVAC controls with the new head unit. It comes with a couple of pieces, the main bracket, a couple of tabs, and 4 screws. The first one that I got from Joying was actually defective. It was missing these screw holes. Talked to them, they were wonderful, and they sent me replacement. So reshooting this section of the video so that we can show you how this actually is supposed to go. It's pretty simple. Just have the 2 brackets, and they're pre-tapped. The holes are pre-tapped on the other side, and there is a little
there's a little indent on here that helps to align the bracket. And we'll just see how this fits. The orientation is like this, so the head unit will sit up here, and the tabs that you had to trim, come on, focus. The tabs that you had to trim off are intended to slide into these other little tabs. So just test fit this real quick. And it fits perfectly. Something that the instructions don't make entirely clear is what you're supposed to do with these. They just kind of show up in the box. And they have they've got a place for screws, and then they have, come on, focus, these little alignment tabs. And these alignment tabs correspond to a couple of little nubbins that stick up. So these will only fit on one side because of the way it is, the way those little nubs are set up. It can either go like this or like this. And I believe they are supposed to go in this orientation. So this tab sits closest to the bottom of the unit. Putting it in, nothing special. These are not pre-tapped. So it's a little bit of effort to get the screw started. I've found that it is easiest to start one and then kind of snap everything in, push everything in place, and then put the other screw in and cinch it down. These are fairly weak connections, so it's pretty easy to bend or break them. The plastic just isn't very strong. So do not over tighten them, and definitely use something like a microfiber towel or a very clean towel when you put this down to help prevent scratching the screen. Go ahead and put the other side in here, start the screw, line everything up, put the other screw in, cinch everything down, and then it should line up just like that.
Okay, so here is the camera that I bought. So as you can see, it still maintains a switch to open up the trunk and has the camera. This is the wiring harness for the switch. And then this is the wiring harness for the camera. They give you this nice tiny little connector that you can run through. You can go ahead and run on through this trunk boot and get it into the cabin. So this is a pretty easy thing to remove, or should be. I've not actually pulled it off yet. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these clips. They are this style. So you can go ahead and use your clip removal tool to slide on in under there, pop them out, and then once they're popped out like this, the whole assembly should pull right out. And as always, use little baggies because, well, you always tell yourself you will remember where these screws go, and at least I never actually do. You can do this with a screwdriver, but these tools are worth their weight in gold. and it's just spend a couple of dollars on one. So there is a little metal tab in there that is going to have to slide out. So I believe I'm going to push that down far enough that I can slide this back out, and then push the cable through the hole in the trunk. Hopefully that'll do it. Okay, there we go. So the hang up was these getting caught in here, so it just took a little bit of unreasonable force, and that is removed. Now we have to remove the existing trunk latch. There are two clips here and here, so just take a nylon pry tool so we don't damage anything. Kind of work that on in there, release this clip, slide over, release that clip, and it should pull out nice and easy. Then we just go ahead and disconnect the switch connector, and we're ready to move forward. So on Amazon, one of the complaints that I have seen about these particular cameras, or sort of all of these kind of cheap aftermarket cameras, is that this silicone boot likes to pop off. And when this isn't on, the fitment is quite poor. So going to go ahead and use a little bit of gasket maker and seal that up. I'm going to start with an isopropyl alcohol based cleaner. And just try and clean any residual oils off. It probably doesn't make a difference, but it certainly can't hurt. And same thing for the plastic. So this is definite overkill, but I'm using some ultra black because it's what I have. And this is one of those things that a little dab will do you. We're not waterproofing this, so it doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but we do want it to stay attached. Go ahead and reinstall the boot. Mounting this is real simple. Just going to undo that so we can get to it easily. Go ahead and fish the wire through. Connect to it's a plug and play connector to the existing trunk button, or trunk button connector. And this you can put in starting at the back.
and then just snap in. And my boot came off a little bit here, so we'll try and just tuck that back in. And hopefully, once that RTV seals, it'll be good. And then the moment of truth. And it works. Next, we have to go ahead and remove this inner trunk trim panel. This is easy. Just flip that little tab and set that aside. In here, there are one, two, three of those little clips. So, and then this needs to come out as well. So that little tie down point. And so that is a Torx T40. So go ahead and set all of this aside. So something that does not strictly have to be done, but I found it much easier to just remove, is taking this out because it overlaps with this trim panel right here. So there are four of these plastic clips, and then these two little covers hide two Phillips head screws. So just go ahead and remove these. And these can be a little bit of a trick to get removed, but they will come out. So, and what just happened to me here is the two pieces separated while I was still trying to remove them. If that happens, you can just pop your tool back under the inner piece and it should pop out fairly easily. And forgot to mention, this also needs to come out. You can remove this. And then start removing this. So you can just come on in here and slide that out. It's much easier from the back seat. And there we go. I seem to have shot myself in the foot here a little bit. Some of the sound deadening. I've covered up the holes that I need to get to. But I found one right back here. And we need to go ahead and pop this open. I'm not sure how difficult it is going to be to fish the wire through. However, it is nice and small, so hopefully it won't be too bad. Especially when working with rubber boots, don't use metal tools. You're much more likely to damage the rubber, and then you could have a water leak. Oh, and I should also note that these two wires, at least on this camera, they are, the camera comes with lines built in already. So those grid lines to show where the back of your car is. If you do not want them, you need to short these together. If you do want them,
you just leave them as is. Go ahead and fish this through. I'm going to leave at least a little bit of slack because I don't want this rattling around in here, and I'm going to go and zip tie some of that together. And I'm going to try and remember that this is where this connector is. That way, if I do decide to get rid of the grid lines, I can get rid of them. I'm not sure if my head unit does that on its own, and if it does, if it has the steering angle, which I would prefer. So it can be very difficult to try and get cables through these rubber boots. There are a couple of approaches. One is to go ahead and use a pull string, and the other is you can just brute force it, or you can put a little bit of lubrication on it, which is what I'm going to try. This is a bit of silicone grease. I know some greases can degrade plastic or can degrade the rubber. I don't know if silicone will, so do it at your own risk. I'm also taking care not to get any of the grease in the connector. And wherever you're working, the more you can straighten this out, the easier it will be. Because the cable, the farther you go, the cable will have a tendency to bunch up. Awesome. There we go. That is through. We'll go ahead and reseat these boots. Or grommets, I'm not sure. This one we're going to feed down into the car. Through that hole. Now we can go ahead and reseat this one. And we're back to normal, and one of the really hard parts of this is done. So I don't think that people will go quite this far. I intend to run the cables up through the center console. My guess is that most people would want to run them from the back seat through the door and through the basically the kick plate area, and then up through the behind the glove box and into the stereo. I'm going to be doing a little bit more sound deadening in here, so I'm going to be pulling out all of the carpet. So for me, it makes a lot more sense to go up through the center console. So to remove that, you go ahead and you can grab, this is already sort of out, you can kind of grab some of the leather on the steering wheel boot, get it to pop up a little bit, and it will pop out. Turning it like that will help. Where did that go? Then you can just work your way around with a pry tool. Just gonna go and pop that up a little bit. This is definitely more difficult while holding a camera. Difficult.
And do be careful. Since this is wood, it can crack if you pry too hard. Go ahead, shift that back down into fourth to give myself a little bit more room. Shift the steering boot, or the shifter boot, dump all my screws on the seat, and then I don't have heated seats. If you have heated seats, I believe you might have extra connectors here. So I just have to come in, push the two tabs, and that'll pop out, and then that trim piece has been removed. The next step here is to remove two 10mm bolts here and here. And the next part will be to remove the boot on the parking brake. To do this, you can just take here and grab and pull. And then hopefully not snap any clips. So that will come right off. Sorry you're getting bounced around the car so much. It's just easier this way. Next, this rear center trim has to come out. So again, just work your way around with a pry tool. For the sedan, I'm assuming it's similar. The center console just is not nearly as long, but I'm not certain because I don't have one. Okay, and on the back of this, there are going to be, I believe, two connectors. One for, oh, maybe just, I might have lied, just the one. I'm going to take that out. And it's a little bit, oh, and that popped out on its own. So this connector right here goes there, which is for the warm-cool control. Next step is these two, I believe they are 10mm nuts, have to be removed. Yep, 10mm. And I like to cheat using a magnet. Next, there's a pair of T20 screws in here that need to come out. So I had forgotten one other trim piece that has to come off, and that's this guy right here. Just try and work that off. There we go. And then the seat cushions have to come out, and these are difficult. There are two clips here and here, and they are very strong and definitely required two hands for me, so it won't be on video. But as you pull up on them, you can see them right there and right there. Then the seat cushion slides right out. And then we're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing on the other side. So it's going to be a good chance to vacuum all this little crap that I didn't know was down here. But next we take this piece of this little cushion, and that just pops right out. See, there's a little snap that held it in. We have to remove the footwell lights. So with this open, it's nice and easy. You should be able to just pop them out from behind, like so. and you're going to disconnect the wires. So there's one. And there is two. Okay, and in theory, the rear center console should now be free. To pull it out, you're going to start at the back. Let's see here. So there are some clips up here that are going to have to pop off as you do this. I need two hands for this, so we'll be back once it's been removed. Now, at this point, if you weren't going to be pulling the carpets out, this would be way more than enough to keep on moving forward. You probably, even if you wanted to go under the, if you wanted to go take this path for your cables, you probably could once you pulled the seat cushion out, because then you can run your cables over, tuck them under here without having to pull the door panel and keep on going. Or if you wanted to take this path, you can run your cables under here. You don't even have to run them under the carpet because that center console goes there, at least in the coupe, and then you can just run them through here and tuck them in. So that is about all I'm going to do for this part, because most people aren't going to be removing the carpets. So we'll be back once that's all done and the stereo is ready to go in. I got my wiring run. I've ended up not pulling all the carpet out, just pulling a lot of it away. And so I have mine running straight up. Merged in with this harness. And then right up and through. It would actually be fairly easy to do. But probably not as easy as going through there. One mistake that I found that I made the hard way with a little bit of a spark is that when I cut this power line, since I was going to power it from the trunk, it also caused this wire is still live because it's powered through the main harness, right, which is what would normally power the radio. And had I not cut this, that is what would have powered the radio. So there's still a little bit of copper wire sticking out there, and I tapped it against a piece of metal while this was connected to the car, got a spark. Forgotten to do something about it. So I would not try and just use some like electrical tape on something like this. You really don't want it to fail while it's in the car. So I'm going to go ahead and just take a piece of heat shrink tube. The piece that I have that fits best is blue, because I could de-pin this and remove the whole pin, but I don't want to, just in case I ever decided to change how I went about this. So I'm going to put this on so there's a good 1/2 inch of heat shrink that has not covered the wire itself. I'm just going to go in, take a heat gun real quick, let it warm up. Let it shrink up, and there we go. Now, no more sparking. Okay, well, it's another day again, and I finally have the reverse camera wired in. I read quite a few forum posts about there being noise with these cameras if you just power them directly, and especially if you try and power them straight off of the reverse light. So most people recommend using a relay to power it, controlled by the reverse light, which is what I went ahead and did. And I've also seen some discussion about getting a power filter, which I also did. So this is the setup. I've got it, got my relay here with a harness hooked onto this grounding point.
and wired in. I know it's a little hard to make sense of anything here. This is the power filter. Again, it's all wired in. Everything has been soldered and heat shrunk together just to try and have nice solid connections, with the exception of one vampire splice, which I'm not a big fan of, but that was to get onto the reverse light wire. Now, something that threw me was trying to figure out the wiring, like the actual colors. And at least on this car, it is wire number 4. It is pin number 4, starting from the top, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is a black and blue. And I ran into a little bit of trouble because in the dark there is a brown and blue, and that handles the brake light. So I had accidentally, when I spliced in over here, I had accidentally tied into that, which caused me some headaches. But that's all in place now. And then, because this particular head unit has its own lines on the screen for parking, and they actually move back and forth with the steering wheel via CAN. It's taped up so you can't really see it, but I did go ahead and tie those 2 green wires together. If you remember that those 2 green wires, when you tie them together, get rid of the camera's built-in parking guidelines. So everything is wired up now. Done some basic functional tests so far inside, and it works. I am having some issues with the wiring harness not connecting quite right. So the connections are a little weak, and so I'm getting some problems with the passenger side speakers cutting in and out, so I need to figure that out. Next steps, though, are to go ahead and put the GPS antenna in and the Wi-Fi antennas in. Since I don't have a speaker up here, I'm probably going to try and put them, tuck them right underneath that cover, just for ease. And then I have to get the microphone mounted, and I'm hoping that it will fit right up in here inside the factory microphone mounting point, so I don't have to have it clipped right up there. Sorry, I forgot to get this part on video, removing this dash trim panel. I've had the best luck with starting right over here and using my pry tool and slowly popping it out. I have the most problems getting this last side, this last end out. Again, be careful with this because it will, you can break the wood. They don't give you a whole lot of room, so you got to remove the start switch button first, and then you get a little bit more room and you can unplug the air conditioning control, door lock, and hazard switch. So I also popped this out. I find using my trim removal tool, starting here, working my way over, and then it'll pop, the front will pop up pretty easily. Just be careful to kind of try and lift straight out, not twist so you don't bend the tabs in the back. I've thrown a little bit of trusty 3M tape on my GPS receiver that came with the head unit. And again, since I don't have a speaker up here, gone ahead and run this down through here and out here. So I'm going to go ahead and try to stick that on there. Could be a little bit difficult because it's not really much of a flat surface, so we're going to see whether or not that works. And clearly the Wi-Fi antennas are not going to work up in there, so going to have to find another solution. I am going to have to pull, I believe, the glove box and then this A-pillar trim to try and get my microphone up in this general area. Haven't decided whether I'm going to go on that side or on the driver's side yet. So be back once I get this hooked up. Okay, so going to go ahead and remove the A-pillar. There is a Torx T20 screw right underneath this little airbag. Piece of plastic. So I've had a hard time getting the trim tool under there. So I'm just very carefully going to take a blade, pop it in there, and pop that off. Go ahead and take this T20 out. Then, if I can find it, I'm going to go ahead and start working on removing this. I believe there are 2 clips under here. Okay, and once those are out, this thing gets pulled up and it should lift and wiggle its way out. Looks like both of my clips fell out and stayed in here. So before I forget, I'm just going to go ahead and put those back in. This right here is an airbag, so you need to be extremely careful with it and make sure that you don't put any wires over it. Before I run the wire up any farther, I'm going to try and get this headliner loosened up just a little bit and see if I can pop this guy out as well. So you got to go ahead and move your visors to the side and pop these 2 visor mounts out. So just pop these open. And inside of each is a Torx T20. Go ahead and remove those. So, and as you can see, this just started to sag quite a bit. And actually, I found the easiest way to get this overhead center console out. There are 2 clips back here, here and here. You just kind of go in behind there and push. That'll pop on out, and now it looks like I've got a fair amount of slack that I'll be able to just barely tuck my cable in. I decided to go ahead and replace the factory microphone with this one. It's from Kovtech, I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce it. It's just another aftermarket microphone, but it is intended to replace the factory microphone. So you have nice, clean installation with nothing sticking out. So to put it in, it's very simple. Once you've gone ahead and removed your overhead console, you just go ahead here and you can take a screwdriver, a pry tool, something. Right in here is a little tab. You just need to push that down and this will pop right out. Going to want to transfer this little sticker over to the other microphone so you can't see up inside. This is the factory microphone. When I removed this to transfer it over, I noticed that there is a little piece of foam wedged in between the factory microphone and its housing. It's kind of difficult to see in there, but I think you can. And the aftermarket one does not have that. So I'm wondering, I'm thinking if BMW put that in there, they probably put it in for a reason. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and transfer that into the new microphone. Just go in here with a little pick, pop that out. Just tuck that back in there. Move it so it covers the surface of the microphone.
I think this is simply to prevent wind noise. So like a pop guard on any other microphone. Hopefully it doesn't cause any issues. And then we have our other little cosmetic and probably wind filter. Just come in here and try and center that nice and neat. I've had this off a couple of times, so the glue is pretty trashed, but there we go. So we'll go ahead and install this in the overhead console. Now that we have this put together, we'll go ahead and install it in the overhead console, and it goes in just like the factory one did. You'll notice you have a flat spot here and then just that little ledge. The factory one is a little bit less pronounced, but you can still see they're similar. This little flat tab goes in right underneath this lip, and I just punched this in. I'm hoping this will stay once it's mounted in. I'm just going to go ahead and slide that tab in and push down, and we're locked in place. Now that that's in place, all we have to do is run our microphone cable back. Now I had put the joining included microphone. I had installed that. So we're gonna just go ahead and take this out, and have to remember to feed our new microphone cable through to the other side of the headliner so we can run it along the windshield and then down that A-pillar. And this was the microphone connector, so we won't be using that anymore. But the rest of these just get plugged right back in as they were. Everything's nice and in place. I want to leave myself a little bit of slack here. So go ahead and tuck that in and then snap that in place. And we're going to go and, before I actually commit to everything, I'm going to plug this in and just see if it works. I've got this hooked up now just enough to do a test. It's still not run, but just plugged in. So try and be quiet and talk right into the microphone so that this one on the front of it doesn't hear me. What time is it?
The time is 7:35 p.m.
That looks like it works great. So now go ahead and remove the old one and run this one. Make sure that you get the wire run through the opening first. So now I just need to go in and tack everything in place. And you should disconnect the battery before doing the work around the airbags like this. Do as I say, not as I do, I suppose. But I'm going to use plenty of zip ties here just to make sure that it absolutely will not interfere with the airbag. And rotate the clip part of the zip tie away from the airbag, so if it did go off, it doesn't puncture it. I'm going to go ahead and throw just a little bit of tape on the wire in here with the air vent so that it doesn't get in the way when I'm trying to put it back together, as well as to help minimize any kind of rattle. And then just cut up the zip ties.
So I'm going to try and cheat a little bit here. I have the microphone that I need to get run up. I thought it was enough to take the glove box out, but looking at it, there's a straight open shot through here, and I'm going to try and cheat and just run this through. However, to get up here, there's not enough room to pass the microphone up, but there should be enough room to pass the 1/8" connector down. So I'm just going to start by passing that through there. Give myself some slack. I'm going to just try and feed this through. And there we go. I've also had some issues with this particular harness in the front and rear passenger side speakers intermittently connecting and disconnecting. I've been in touch with Joying about it. They are going to be sending me a replacement harness. Their customer service has been great. But for the meantime, they also suggested that I try bending these pins a little bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and give them a little bit of a torque to the side. I don't want to do too much because it's a pretty snug fit with the factory connector. These all connect in on the slots on either side of these blue strips. So we'll give this a shot, see if it works as a short-term fix. But I imagine within the next week and a half, I should see the replacement harness. And then hopefully that'll fix the issue for good. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this guy back in. Keep that tab lifted out. See if we can get everything to seat in with those bends. And snap that back in place. I'm just gonna sanity check myself here, pop this out and make sure I didn't permanently bend any pins. And no, I did not. So there we go. And lock that in. And now we'll have to plug the stereo in and see what happens. Okay, well, I've still had some issues with this, but I think I've gotten it at least temporarily figured out. Bending the pins didn't help too much, but something that I noticed was the pins themselves on the Joying harness side weren't seating in quite all the way. So it's certainly not going to be a permanent fix, but sorry about the wiggling there. I went ahead and sort of seated it all in and then pushed those pins in with a screwdriver a little bit more. So hopefully that'll get me through until the new harness comes, and that should be a quick and easy swap out. So once you have your main harness all figured out and everything is wired, you can go ahead and just get things plugged in. So as long as you make sure you know what wires are what, it is nice to have the behind the stereo organized fairly well. I know it looks like a mess, but everything's not in one giant rat's nest. So I'm going to go ahead and sort of work my way from left to right here, with the exception of the antenna connector, because it will not reach the way that I have this set up for filming. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the microphone, which goes in right here. And then I have the two USB extensions hooked up.
So these are going to go to my center console, which you'll see in another clip. I just go in and plug those in. This cable is for the SIM card, and I do have a SIM card installed through US Mobile. They're pretty cheap. I'll probably end up switching to tethering, but just for getting things figured out, I wanted to see what it was like. After taxes, I think it's about 24 bucks for a month with 5 gigs of LTE data. So this here, let's get this untangled. This SMA connector here is the GPS. So these are nice and easy. They just go on like a coaxial cable, like if you've done cable TV, and thread on. Make sure they're snug. I mean, don't try and rip them out, but nice and snug. SMA is a good connector. I'm surprised, frankly, and very pleasantly surprised to see them included on this unit. I would not have expected the manufacturers to spend the money on them. And then finally, I have 2 Wi-Fi antennas here, which also both use SMA connectors. Same thing, rinse and repeat. Okay, well, things are just about buttoned up in here. I've got, so for my Wi-Fi antennas, they come with some 3M double stick tape already on them, and my only real application for them is if I'm tethering from the car. So I actually mounted them here and here. I've got all of my wires, my excess wire bundled up here and somewhat organized, and I've got everything hooked up. Got GPS and the 2 Wi-Fi antennas. The microphone is tucked there, the antenna is there, and then these 2 USB cables. It comes with a pair of USB extensions, so I hooked those up just so they can be wired, and I'm going to be installing a like an extra USB port. I don't know how to describe it, like a cigarette lighter double USB connector somewhere. I haven't decided where yet, but that'll at least get me the cables going to it. Everything seems to function, so now it's just a matter of hooking the last bit of it up and putting it in place and verifying again that everything works, and then screwing it in. So hopefully it's home stretch and just about done. So I've gone ahead and added in a pair of USB ports for the USB extensions that come with the head unit. It's just a simple USB 3 extension from Amazon, and just took a step bit, drilled a hole through the plastic, and had to trim it out because this is looks to be glass fiber reinforced plastic with some sort of soft touch overmolding. And so the glass fiber plastic will drill out fine with a step bit, but it will just kind of push the softer rubber through. So you have to go in with an X-Acto knife or something, hobby knife, and trim it out so it will fit. And that is just going to get reinstalled right in here. This is a very easy thing to take out. You have 2 clips here, 1 clip here, and then 1 clip here. This one you will need a tool to push back if you're trying to remove this. And then these 2 tabs are fixed, and the pocket slides right underneath them. So try putting this thing back in. Hopefully I didn't miscalculate. Oh, there we go. And then she should just snap in place. And there we go. To install this bracket, it fits nice and tight right in here. It reuses these existing holes, and you will go ahead and reuse the existing Torx T20 screws that came out of there. So just set that in place. Cinch this down. Then we can go ahead and we'll do a quick test fit of the head unit just to make sure that everything fits. And our alignment tabs are right. So go ahead and feel that, and that seems bang on. So next, going to go ahead and hook up the HVAC controller. The wires are a little bit of a mess here. And just like on the bench, this should very snugly just snap right in place. And then we'll test fit this again with the HVAC controller in place. And beautiful. That's how everything fits together.
Well, somehow, and I'm not sure how, I managed to lose the video of the very final installation steps for this. There's not much to it. It's pretty simple, so just cover the Cliff's Notes. Once this is in place and everything fits, you'll go ahead and take this trim piece right here that fits around the HVAC controls. You'll remove the head unit. You'll put that trim piece on. I broke a little tab here, so that's why it's sticking out too many times, uninstalling and reinstalling, trying to film it. But you'll go ahead, you'll snap this trim piece onto the HVAC controller. You'll put that in, and then place the head unit in here. And underneath these two little covers are some screws. So you'll take the long screws that were included with the head unit. You'll run them through, screw them into the car itself. It can be a little touchy when you're putting it in, so I found the best way is to tighten one just a little bit, then tighten the next, and back and forth, so the unit doesn't shift and seat in crooked. And once those are in, just go ahead and pop these little covers in, and you're done. I hope this has been helpful, and if it has been or you've liked it, please go ahead, like the video, subscribe, comment. It's all very useful. If you have any questions, things that I didn't cover, I know there are some details that I missed, please leave a comment and I will do my best to respond and get you whatever answers you need.